Good afternoon. This week we're reading the book of James. Today we're on chapter 1. I want to thank you, brothers and sisters in Christ at Faith Lutheran Church, for having this idea. It's been really cool to be reading the same thing and discussing it together like this. So, here we go. Here's the video on chapter 1. There are a lot of ideas packed in there. I find James to be really dense with ideas. One introduction to the book of James called it the Proverbs of the New Testament. So for that reason, I'm not going to go over everything in this chapter, and I think you'll thank me for it. But I am going to go over basically three main ideas in this chapter that are going to show up again that are foundational for the book of James. The first one is testing, trials, and temptation. They're all kind of the same thing. At least they're using the same words in the Greek. Just like our English word for test could mean like your faith is being tested, will it stand firm or not? Or maybe you're doing some kind of a scientific test to figure something out, or there are just different ways to use the word. The same thing with these Greek words. So at the beginning here, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. What are those trials? For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. What are those trials that are testing your faith? Well, later on in the chapter, now I'm in verse 4, I'll start with 13. Let no one say, when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. That word tempted, see at the beginning we're talking about trials of various kinds, and then here we're talking about temptation and being lured by our desire. That's the same word, at least they're related. Being tempted, that's the verb form, and then trials is the noun form of that same word. So it's all kind of mixed in there. What kind of trials are we talking about? Well, in the book of James, I think it's mostly temptation is what it's talking about. Different ways that we can fall into sin, whether it's quarreling with one another or something else. It's mostly about sin. So just keep that in mind when you see the word trial or test or temptation, that they're all they're all related, and mostly I think that it's talking about temptation. So these are the kinds of trials especially that we're talking about, that each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. This is the danger, the inherent danger in temptation. It lies in our own sinful desire. So the danger, the temptation comes from without, right? But it's our own desire, it's our own sinful nature that latches on and makes it deathly dangerous to us. Because then it turns into sin, and sin, when it's fully grown, brings forth death. This is what James doesn't want for us. So he says, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial or temptation. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. This is, I would say, the theme of the book. At the very end of the book, he's going to say, good for you if you bring a brother back who is straying from the faith. James does not want us to lose the faith. James wants us to remain steadfast in the face of temptation. Okay, so steadfastness. That's the next idea. So first there's this trial, testing, temptation thing going on. Steadfastness through that. James's point in saying God doesn't tempt anyone is to say, look, God is not the one who's trying to lead you astray from the faith. In fact, don't be deceived, my beloved brothers. Verse 17, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. So you think steadfastness, there's this patience, perseverance kind of idea, and it's really sort of remaining steady, remaining the same. We're tempted to leave the faith. We're tempted to act against our faith, to act against the word, but we're going to remain steady. We're going to be patient. We're going to hold the course, right? We're going to hold out. That's the steadfastness idea. And this is the nature of God. He is the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. And he is the one who has brought us forth. He's the one who's created us new. He's the one who has made us to be born again through the living and abiding word, as 1 Peter says. So of his own will, he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. So James wants us to remain steadfast. God is not trying to make us, waver. In fact, God is the one who brought us forth to be the first fruits of his new creation. So, living in that is then the key. So then, in the ESV here, the next heading is hearing and doing the word, right? Be doers of the word and not just hearers of the word. Steadfastness implies not just hearing the word, but working it out in our lives, in our actions, in our words. And that's what James is about, because when we're tempted to sin, when our desire, turns into sin, leads to death, right? The opposite of that, resisting that, remaining steadfast, would be to hear the word and then do the word. So that's why James is talking that way. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. And then he says, religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world, as opposed to empty words. So a faith that remains steadfast is one that is not just empty words, but there is substance. It's one that's not doubting, it's not double-minded, it's focused, it's a true faith. And true faith is seen by one's works, as we'll see in the next chapter. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow for chapter 2.